All right, then. I think I'm recording, so let's go ahead and get started. If more people show up, I'm happy to admit them. All right, so I'm very excited about this next sort of Bible study that we're going to do, where we're going to look at a couple of different worship songs and talk about how to interpret them, and more broadly, especially today, talk about how to interpret worship music in general. There are a lot of workshops out there for interpreting music, especially, I think, interpreting worship music. But the ones that I have been to, very few have focused on some of the most important aspects of worship music. And so that is why a couple of years ago, I hosted my own workshop about religious music and its translation. So let's, if we can, let's look at this PowerPoint that I created for that. Are you able to see this right? Excellent. All right. So the title of the workshop and the PowerPoint obviously is Lost in Translation. I thought it was clever. Do you know by chance the difference between translation and interpretation? Well, if not, the difference is, and it's not synonymous like most people think.
You're breaking up a lot.
Yeah, sorry, my son's jumping, making a lot of noise. Sorry, let's try that all again. So the title is Lost in Translation, and there is a difference between translating and interpreting, albeit a very subtle one, but still a difference. To translate something is to take it from a written language and turn it into another language. To interpret, I'm sure you know, is to turn a spoken or signed language into another spoken or signed language. And what we do when preparing to interpret a worship song is we're taking it from its written form and translating it into a signed form. So not everything will apply to our specific situation, but we'll go ahead and go through this all. My home church was Community Bible Church. It's where I served in its deaf ministry for 10 years. I came up with the acronym CHOP for Community Hands of Praise. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because it's very important. If you're doing this, if you're going through this video, through this workshop, sort of, because you want to bring it to your church, it's important to have a team with you, whether you fly under the same banner, having a name or not. It's important that you get people behind you and with you. And it's also important to share information. We used Planning Center Online, but now there are dozens and dozens of apps, like Church Director. And sign up. There's a basic version. There's also a paid version that you can use, and you can look up. There are dozens every day, and that's a great way of sharing. Not just important information like the songs, but also coordinating which volunteer would be willing to do which song, and that will come in handy much later in this talk. It's important to meet up together, even if just via Zoom, to talk through the whole translating process. And I'll give you several tips for you to bring back with you to your church or organization. But it's also possible you could be, there we go. Hey, welcome back.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's totally fine. So I was just saying it's important to have a team if you can, because this is a very important part of every church service is the time of worship, the time that you have for everyone singing together. It's not simply, 20 minutes completely wasted of everybody being uncomfortable and spitting on each other. It's really important, and it serves a very important purpose. So it deserves a great deal of dedication from religious interpreters. And I'm going to share some tips with everybody for translating worship music into ASL. Let's get into it. Let's get a few slides here. All right, steps. Here's the fun part. So one of the most important tips that I can give anybody, and this is one of those points that nobody else talks about. Read the entire song. And that's really important because it's tempting when translating something to go word for word or line by line. But if you do that, you miss important elements of the song, like who is speaking to whom, what is meant by those words, not just what is said. You miss the tone, the emotion trying to be conveyed by simply going line by line by line instead of looking at the song as a whole. I also worded it very specifically: read it, don't sing it. It's very hard for me, especially if I'm doing a song that I enjoy, to just read through it. But it's really important to understand what the song is about and what the song is trying to convey. So as best you can, read the entire song and try to understand, first of all, what is trying to be conveyed. Like, what is the message of this song, as best you can sum up. It's also really important to figure out who is talking to whom. So if it's, some worship songs we have where it's man singing to God, those are the two perspectives that we have right there. Some are the voice of God or the Holy Spirit speaking to us. And some are believers speaking to unbelievers. Whatever it is, it's important that we figure that out first before we try to translate the song, because only then will we be able to really capture what the song is trying to convey. Imaginative recreation. This is a step I particularly enjoy, only because it's a little goofy. So let me explain. When translating any song, really, but worship songs included, I like to throw in a step where you take what you've come up with so far. So you have who is speaking to whom, you have the what, you have what is being conveyed as best you can sum up. As best you can, the tone or emotion, is it sad, is it happy, is it angry, is it urgent, is it patient, long-suffering? All of that you're trying to convey through that song. And through this step of imaginative recreation, I want you to, without signs, without words, try and act it out. Imagine it. Think of it creatively. Picture it in your head. Paint it, if that's how you want to imagine it creatively. The point is to think of it in pictures, because ASL isn't a words language; it's a pictures language. So it's important to shift our brains from words to pictures. What does this song look like? Not just what does it mean, what does it say, what does it look like? And thinking of it creatively, even playing a game like charades, using the themes of the song and things like that, will really open your mind to how this song looks. And action, use visual signs. So use visual signs. Now you're getting into ASL. You're actually including some signs to interpret, because now you have a sign language or a gestural language. You're including some of those visual signs that you've come up with in your imaginative recreation into your actual performance of the song. Only those that are more accurate to sign language mind, but it is possible to find some things, some actions that would show the song better than sign would tell the song, because that is our goal. Our goal is to show the song and not tell the song. And this is a much harder step, by the way. These next two actually are the hardest. Take what you've come up with, because I don't want you to listen to the song until the last step, the very last step. You make it rhythmic, so you make it flow. What songs or what signs you can stretch or prolong, things like, I'll give you an example. The sign for Jesus is commonly done like this. Now, the sign for Jesus is just Jesus. Tap, tap, that's it. But the rhythmic sign for Jesus is Jesus. It's drawn out, because in the song, it will be drawn out. And you draw it out. Oh, question. Oh, no, you're just shouting. Jesus, like that.
Oh no, the drawn out one. Okay.
Yep. There's a song that that I love that I'll never hear again, because it was created by someone from the worship team at my previous church, and the chorus goes like this, very complicated. Jesus, and that's it. That's Jesus, Jesus over and over again. And I find myself just signing Jesus again and again, just like that, drawing it out as long as he's saying Jesus. So yeah, it's like that. That's what it means to make it rhythmic, make it flow, including from one sign to another. So when interpreting, when we have a break or a pause, we're taught to hold. So if we're going to end on Jesus, somebody is talking about Jesus, this is where we end, right here. We're holding this until the next thing is said. That keeps our hands from going into this position or down to our sides, where we have to bring them all the way back up again, or doing what's his name, Billy Bobby? No, Ricky Bobby, where I don't know what to do with my hands. You know, this position. It's not helpful for interpreting. So you linger on that last sign until you move into the next series of signs there. The last step here is to fix what you feel needs fixed and to shorten. You only know what needs to be fixed and what needs to be shortened once you listen to the song again. So all of these steps are just you looking at like a printed out version of the song and scratching out, making notes, which is what I strongly encourage, by the way, printing it out, just so that you can have it and make your own notes. And then once you have that scratched up, sheet of paper, you listen to the song again, and you do your translation of the song, and you do it again and again and again until it flows with the song, and that will require you to fix certain things that just don't work. You may find that once listening to the song again, after examining it and breaking it apart, that you may have overthought something, and that's possible. That's the stage where you are free to fix it, and you shorten it as best you can so that it fits the song, so that you're not like 2 minutes later you're still going on about Jesus, and the preacher's already up there and he's going on and on and on. So it's important that you flow with the song. Here's some really good tips. Before I get into these, what do we have next? Yeah. Let me talk about the biggest, most important note. I don't know. Most important thing to consider when choosing the worship songs. So as interpreters, we don't get much say in which songs are done on Sunday mornings or Wednesday nights or whenever we choose to go to church. I'm going to a church now that has Saturday night service, which is pretty cool. I can't call them up and say, hey guys, you need to be doing this song. But I could at my previous church, because I was very friendly with the music pastor. and he really cherished my input, my the songs that I would feed him. He may not have even heard before. So it really all depends on your personal situation. If you're comfortable suggesting ideas, then I would do that. But otherwise, it is so important that these translations communicate one thing. If they don't communicate all of this tone, emotion, the who is speaking to whom, your imaginative recreations, your action signs, etc., if it doesn't flow, there's one thing it has to have, and it has to have a whole lot of you. It has to have worship, because this is a time of worship. This is a time of worship music. When the band goes up on stage to perform for that worship time, um, it isn't a performance. It isn't a concert. They are leaders in a time of worship. Their goal is to focus your attention onto God, basically, the goodness of God, the forgiveness of God, the presence of God. To focus, that's what worship means, is focused attention. When you focus attention on something, or when something consumes your thoughts, you're worshiping it. Which is why we need to be really careful about the time that we spend on certain things in our lives, because that can take the place of worship. Even family can take that place of worship, and we need to be very careful about that. But that worship team, their goal is not to entertain. Um, it's not even to do the song well, though it helps. Their goal is to ensure that everyone listening, the congregation, not the audience, the congregation, uh, is brought into that place where they have that focused attention on God. And you can't break that as the interpreter. It's your job to provide that same experience, um, which helps when you have additional volunteers, because then you can choose which songs mean more to you than others. I can tell you one story about a man who ended up being my best man in my wedding, but he would help interpret the songs on Sunday morning whenever the Spirit led him. This particular morning, um, he volunteered to interpret this song. He got up, and it was not his best job. He got, I don't know, 15 signs out, grand total. There was a lot of repetition, but but that was the most worshipful experience I may have ever been involved in, because his heart was 1,000% in it. He asked to interpret that song because it meant something to him. And if you'd like to know what that song was, I'm happy to share it with you later when I remember it. But that's the point. That's the whole point. It's not just to get through that 20-25 minute segment where somebody's leading worship. And I know several religious interpreters who view it like that. It's just, oh man, I got to get through this 4 or 5 songs before the pastor comes up, and that takes a lot of energy and mental capacity in and of itself. So they look down on that time of worship because it takes away from what they feel is the most important part, the message. And to a degree, I can agree that the sermon is one of the most important parts. It includes the invitation, the message of, hey, if this is hitting you a particular kind of way, maybe now's the time you do something about it. But I have heard the voice of God, I think, more in song form than I have in those quiet moments. Maybe an exaggeration. But God never fails to use a worship song for his glory. This is a great story. So recently, I was feeling really run down, a little bit depressed, in fact, and just really struggling to keep going. But I knew that God hadn't abandoned me, because he's in the middle of all of this craziness. He's still I can still see his little winks, the little things that he does. That's so clearly God. I don't know if you ever experienced something like that, where it's so clearly God is just letting you know that He's still there. He's getting you through it. It may not look the way you want it to, but He's getting you through it. Well, even with those wings, I still felt like I was struggling. So I deliberately I opened Pandora. I turned on my Christian music station, which I've actually labeled God Speaks, because that's how much I believe in God's ability to use worship music to speak to us. And I said, "Speak, Lord, I'm listening." And the first song that came on brought me to tears. The first song spoke exactly what I needed to hear at the exact moment. And God's done that a dozen times just to me. And I've heard a dozen stories of it happening to other people. And if it's happened to you, I would love to hear that story too. But worship music is a time, it's a very important time, and it shouldn't be played down or looked at as just something to get through. If we just focus on our interpretation of this music, this worship, and focus on being worshipful during this time, we will greatly impact the deaf community for God's kingdom. I am certain of it. So keep that in mind as you get the list of songs for Sunday. That's another thing, by the way. If you're let me back up even further. If you are a church interpreter, religious interpreter, I encourage you to get with your pastor and or religious leader and get them to send you the notes that they're going to use on Sunday, because you're interpreting them, and it's just as important for you to be prepared as it is for them. And also get with the worship leader or music pastor, so that you're included on what list of songs they're going to do. That way you can prepare that way as well. All right, let's get into this last few tips that I have for translating music into worship music. I don't know, into ASL. There we go. So the first is fingerspelling. Do it? No, don't fingerspell. As little as you possibly can, and here is why. Fingerspelling doesn't look good. It doesn't flow. Style flows. Style, it goes around in a circle, but nothing else does. I'm certainly missing some kind of example that I could, like a time that it does, but let's say that 99% of the time it doesn't flow well. It doesn't look good, and it breaks that attention on God. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, wait a minute, I need to use my brain. I need to figure out what's being spelled right now, and that's not our goal. So avoid fingerspelling whenever possible. Use a sign. Look it up if you don't know the word. Ahead of time so that you're prepared for that moment. But try not to fingerspell. Now, my tip about mouthing the words. So it's very tempting to mouth the words, especially if this is indeed a song that you enjoy to a great degree, because you've chosen to interpret. So the temptation will be there to mouth the words, to sing along. I just want to make sure that you're using caution when you do, because it won't always match up, especially if you've gone through that list that I shared of other tips that you need to take into consideration for translating this song in ASL. And that might throw off your translation if you think about the actual words instead of what you've prepared ahead of time. So keep that in mind. Also, is something called mouth morphemes in ASL, where your mouth does things that make no sense, that don't have a word. Chaw, I don't think is a word. I could be wrong, but it is a mouth morpheme for really big things. And I'm sure a few other things, but at the very least, very big things. And for an authentic ASL experience, using those mouth morphemes whenever possible. um, is recommended. I highly recommend. Ooh, repetition. Songs repeat themselves, especially worship music. You'll notice again and again and again. You'll see the same lines, um, sometimes the same words. I just told you about a song, Jesus, where the words were Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And that's it. There was another song, I wish I had this prepared, where there is one phrase repeated, I counted 15 times. And you don't really notice because it gets more and more hype each time, and you're like, oh, it's coming, it's coming. So here's my tip for repetition. Don't be afraid of repetition, but also don't be afraid to create with repetition. So don't feel like you're locked in a box. I gotta do this one thing for this one word or one sentence, because you don't. There's no rule that says you have to say the same word or sign the same word. No rule that says you have to sign the same sentence over and over again. So for some songs, it may even be advantageous to take advantage of that repetition time to dive down deeper into the real meaning of the song or the historical biblical context where that background information would help the understanding of the song and your interpretation of it. So don't be afraid of repetition. And again, also don't be afraid of creating with repetition. Using repetition to expound is a very good tip I found. As we've already said many times, I'm sure by now, ASL is an emotional language. It's a language of pictures. It's also a language of reactions and impact. Now, this plays into your worship face and how involved you are with the song, but it also includes your very interpretation of the song. Now, let me explain. In a conversation, as some songs will be structured, it may be apt to include something that is not explicit in the transcript of the song. So a reaction that the other person has to those words being said. So for example, let's take the most common reaction sign. Oh, I see. That one. So you could be interpreting a song and you're like, Jesus saves us. Understand. Like that. Just a little something to throw in there. Now, that's not an actual song. I probably should have chosen a song ahead of time to demonstrate that. But as we go throughout this study of translating songs in ASL, I'm certain that we'll come across a few examples where we can include a reaction sign or face showing the impact of what is being said, because that is what conveys emotion and feeling and meaning to your deaf participants. Okay, so let's talk about the quote unquote performance. I don't like that word performance because that's not what it is, but there's no better way of describing the actual production of this prepped worship time. All the songs that you prepared ahead of time to perform. So let's talk about that really quickly. If you're interpreting in a church, you've already been placed somewhere. It may be necessary for you to fight for a better location. So keep that in mind. It's important for you and a deaf person to be in a spot that is mutually advantageous. So you need to be in a place where there's a lot of light. The deaf person, or deaf blind person perhaps, could benefit from being closer to the stage, where the pastors would be or the worship leaders would be, so that they can read lips as necessary or simply watch as stuff is happening behind them. So keep location in mind and know that you don't have to be settled in one place, especially if that place is not working. If it's not working, go to somebody who can give you a hand, setting you up officially somewhere else, and make it happen. I was under a very conscientious pastor as deaf ministry leader, and he knew all of those things ahead of time, so he put me up at the front row on this sort of side, under a light. So they may have even moved the light to be over me, front row, so that the deaf person could also see the pastor and the worship leaders. The choice, what does that mean? It just means choose wisely who does what. Share the load as best you can so that everything you do is the best you can do. Let's talk about deaf air. That's a phrase I have coined. You can't steal it. All right, you can steal it. I haven't officially copyrighted it or anything. But that is that weird, awkward, what should I do moment when there's a solo and you don't know what to do. Like, why drums. For the drum solo, for the guitar solo, what am I supposed to do? You have a few options. So there is a very famous interpreter, Dasha Pinker here, who interprets songs very enthusiastically, and is very famous for it. You can find her on YouTube. And she is a perfect example of one solution, and that is, in fact, to show the instrument. So if it's a piano solo, do the piano. If it's guitar, do the guitar. The drums, do the drums. The difference is, this isn't like a regular concert. You aren't part of the entertainment. Your job isn't to distract everyone else. It is to convey the message and include the deaf people in the experience that is being around a bunch of music. So if the song calls for it, and if that is something that you are comfortable with, go ahead and do that. There have been some songs where it's been too slow, or the message too important to dilute with piano playing, where my solution has just been to be, there's music. That's literally all I'm doing there. But the benefit of doing this, other than not being distracting because nobody notices this, is that you can, on the underswing, boom, 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 keep with the tempo of the song. So that is a great tool, especially for the beginning of a song, as very few start out with words, start out with somebody singing. It starts out with a few instruments leading you into the song. So for that time especially, but not exclusively, getting the tempo of the song with this hand gesture right here, this sign for music, is one great solution. Now, here's another solution for those of you not feeling very comfortable playing the instrument in front of the church. Now, it's very important that you understand that distinction. I said comfortable doing this, not comfortable doing this. If you are uncomfortable and play an instrument, that's very distracting. And it also makes the piano player look, incompetent, or like they're making lots of mistakes, and you're like, this sounds bad. So very careful with the face. And also be very careful that you're not bullying yourself and doing something that you're not ready for, or that may not be called for this particular song, which is totally fine. So here is the other solution. Ready? That's it. It's called throw focus. You are throwing focus from yourself to the stage. Because let me clue you in on a little secret. They are much more entertaining to watch than you. Can't believe you said that, John. It's true. I'm sorry. Certainly more than me. More entertaining than I am, or could be in these moments. So during solos, if maybe further explanation of the song is necessary, so we're just waiting for the solo to be over, I'll just throw a focus. I'll let the deaf people experience the show. That is somebody shredding the guitar or beating on the drums. And it may be necessary, if that person isn't in a very visible spot, to go ahead and say, drums look, guitar look. That way they know what to look for. But be very careful about that deaf air, because that can get really stale real fast if you don't pay special attention to it. So just keep that in mind. Know that you have me as a resource. All of you are my friends. If you've seen this, doesn't matter if we've met before. We are now friends. I'm sorry. You could do much worse, probably. But I am available. I am here, and should you need my help for specific interpretations of passages of songs, send them to me. I'll see what I can do. Now, these are pastors of music. Steve Shivers was my lead pastor. He was pastor over me as I was head of the deaf ministry. He was also pastor of the traditional music, the old people music. Glenn Hall was my good friend who I was able to submit songs to. These are all people that, if you can find them, they'll certainly answer your questions. No, you are not, because they're like that. I love Neil Cooper. He's awesome. There's also the internet for you to look things up, especially things like hey, what sign should I use for that word or whatever, which I've already told you I discourage going word by word, but sometimes you need to know a word because it's just part of your translation. So look at signingsavvy.com or aslpro.cc. They have changed domains, so don't go to aslpro.com, go to aslpro.cc. And another great thing about aslpro.cc is that it doesn't just include a dictionary of ASL to English or English to ASL. It also includes an idiom dictionary of English idioms in ASL and ASL idioms in English. You may not have known that is a thing. There's also YouTube, but be very, very careful with YouTube because not everyone on YouTube does ASL. Even though they say it's ASL, even though they call it ASL, it's not. It's signed English. And that's okay. It's okay for it to be signed English. And sometimes it will be necessary. In fact, let me make this point perfectly clear. Though this whole presentation has been about translating into ASL, it is most important for you to match the deaf person. If they need a more English-based signing system, use Sign Exact English. Include the does. Honestly, it's less work. It's so much less work than trying to interpret into another language or translate it into another language. See, I get mixed up sometimes too. But here are some that I've found, by and large, tend to do more ASL than English. There's Hands Voice Activated. KT Loveland, it's a little more on the Englishy side, but still does what I would consider to be ASL. And he does that little music thing at the beginning of the songs. So there you go. I'm not the only one doing it. Hilly Greer doesn't do, yes, she does. Yeah. I was going to say she doesn't do Christian songs, but she does. She does a fantastic version of one Sanctus Rio song that I can't remember the name of. Eric Whitborg does not. He has a coda, and I've included him on this list because if you haven't watched his videos, you need to. He has fantastic practice for understanding ASL. Miss O'Brien of O'Brien Sign, that's her handle, does one of the greatest interpretations of Thriller I've ever seen. She also does, songs, other songs as well, Christian songs too, I think. But check out that Thriller video; it's really incredible. And that Rose Buddy, Russell Harvard, and Tiffany Hill is my other suggestions for you to watch. So, my friends, you've made it. That was brutal, I'm sure. I'm very grateful that you stuck with me through that whole video. And I hope that it was helpful. It certainly was fun for me to sort of download all that information on you. And certainly if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me. Next week, we are all meeting Wednesday night, 5:30, same time. And we are going to go over a song together and make sure that everyone who joins us has chosen a song for themselves so that we can get started working on a co-op translation, but also our individual works so that we get lots of practice all in one, I don't know, maybe 8-week session. So keep in mind, if you haven't chosen your song yet, do that soon. I need to pick our group song. I haven't chosen my personal song, but have not chosen a group song. Keep in mind that if this is your first attempt at translating music into ASL, no, aim's still high. When you read through the entire song, think to yourself, can I honestly do this? And I know that's going to sound harsh, but there are some songs that are just way too complicated for a first attempt. So just bear that in mind. Keep it on the back burner. Just put it back there. Keep it safe for later. And do something just slightly easier for your first time. All right, my friends, I love you so much. If you have any prayer requests at all, please feel free to let me know. But even if you don't, I will be praying for you and hope that you guys are praying for each other and for me because Lord knows I need it. Have a great day, guys. Thanks for watching.